Hello, welcome to podcast. Welcome to Rabbit Holes with Aaron. It's a podcast that I lead. I'm Aaron, and I have guests every week. And this week, I have with me Lee that I've run into in different circles. Lee, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Lee Mosler. I am the founder of Rec Digital. We're a tech company that kind of helps businesses stop duct taping all their systems together and start putting everything back in one place, helping them save a lot of time. So we love to talk about tech. We love to talk about automations and AI with our clients. And when I met Aaron, we kind of hit it off and started going down a rabbit hole ourselves. And so, yeah, it's thanks for having me. It's really fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the offer. So many people I invite, and not many accept. So I appreciate that. Yeah, and we talked about a rabbit hole we're going to go down, but like you said, people stop duct taping their systems together and actually get real working technological solutions and or something like that. And I thought duct tape. Duct tape is a perfect rabbit hole topic. So I don't know if we're still going to talk about nomadic lifestyle to start off with, as we discussed, because I don't want to throw a fast one on you, but duct tape is definitely going to have to be one we come back to because like there's so much to talk about with duct tape.
Yeah, let's do it.
But yeah, so you talked about like you have recently experimented or walked the journey of the nomadic lifestyle, moving around a bit, and you mentioned different places you've moved to, and you said you just kind of wanted to think about it and discuss it a little bit. So, you know, come at it from whatever angle you want. How would you like to discuss it?
So I'll just kind of go back on my history a little bit. When I
Sure.
was a kid, my dad was real cheap. We'd say frugal, but that's not really the word. He was he'd spend a lot of money in certain areas and none in others. And so plane tickets weren't really the thing he wanted to spend a lot of money on. And
Sure.
so we would do road trips and we'd go down to South Texas, or every other year we'd drive to my aunt's place in Florida. And I kind of built a love for road tripping at that point, where we were able to see the country, not from an airport, but actually in between, which is where most of America, most of what we know as society is built in.
Yeah.
And so as I got older, I joined the Army. I was stationed in Hawaii for 3 years. I got medically discharged. When I got back to Texas, felt, I don't know, felt like something was missing. And
Hmm.
so I, I did what every person that comes out of the military does. I go back to the same life that I knew before and found that that didn't work. I had changed, not the people were still doing exactly what they were doing when I left. It was just, I
Hmm.
was different. And so, in 2015, we had a chance to go out to Hawaii, and it was like stepping off the plane was like walking back into your childhood home. Like it just felt like everything was complete.
Yeah.
And that was a point where we were like, okay, how do we do this? Can we live in Hawaii? Is that actually feasible? A lot of people talk about it. People will literally spend their entire lives saving up for 2 weeks in Hawaii. But
Yeah.
can we live here? Is this something we can do? And so I'm very analytically minded. Worked out the numbers. I said, okay, we need to be making this much money. We need to have this much saved. And we built out a 5-year plan, and we ended up going to Hawaii in two. And so we moved to Hawaii in 2 years after. So from 2015 to 2017, we worked and saved and really scrimped to get to, where we wanted to be. And then we got to live in Hawaii, and we got to, be in a place where so many people dream of.
Right.
That was our everyday, right? I mean, I get to wake up in the morning, I get to see the beautiful Ko'olau Mountains, or I get to go down to Honolulu, or I get to go to, Waikiki, North Shore, Haleiwa, and that was paradise for us. The the problem came, and the point, we didn't know we wanted to be nomadic at that point, but when COVID hit, they shut the
Yeah.
entire island down, and we weren't able to continue that lifestyle because we lost 40% of our business. Everything went up. I mean, it was really terrible. And so we moved from Hawaii to Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach is still pretty open, and so why not? I can still grow my business there. While we were in Virginia Beach, I kind of got that love for road tripping back. And in the 3 years that we were there, we put about 100,000 miles on a brand new vehicle. Between going to Jersey, going to North Carolina, Virginia, Florida, coming back to Texas. We drove everywhere. We got to see everything, and we ended up going from like Texas to Miami to Virginia Beach. Then we moved down to Miami and learned that culture for about 9 months, and then we were like, absolutely not. And we we went back to
Yeah.
Virginia Beach, and then we finally just now we've only been in Texas for about a year. And so we like going all over the place. We like learning cultures. We love learning about the people. It's really hard to get that when you're only there for, a weekend or two at a time. You really have to immerse yourself into an area for, I would say, at least 6 to 12 months before you can understand what life is like there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that way. Yeah, we've lived in a lot of places for just a few days, and I could say it moves in stages from my experience, right? It moves in stages. You get to the first day, the RV's an RV park. You don't even know where you're gonna be able to get gas. You don't know where the Walmart is. You don't know where anything is. And then you're like, okay, well, we need some groceries. And you go, so you venture out a little bit here and there. And like by the time it's been a week, we know where some of the big restaurants are. We know where Walmart is and gas station and maybe some parks are and stuff like that. And so we kind of start developing a skeletal kind of framework for that location and the Planet Fitness, and whatever. So Planet Fitness is the main part of ours because we like, we don't, Joe doesn't get to take a long enough shower in the RV because of the water heater. So like
Sure.
we want to go to the Planet Fitness, we go work out, and then we take a shower. And it's our shower, um, kind of for a low yearly cost or whatever, well, low monthly cost. But yeah, so we developed this framework of places that we go to like multiple times a week, the library, and as you kind of go to these places over and over and over again, you lay down, it's just like a network of nerves, right? The more you use nerves that fire together, wire together. And so, like, you speed up the process every time. And now, like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, this place is home. Now I know where Walmart, Planet Fitness, if there's normal things in my day-to-day life stuff, I have all the places where I go for my day-to-day life stuff. Already, I know where they are. They're not far away, and I've developed kind of a network for this town. And I joke and say, "Oh yeah, Louisville. This is my old stomping grounds." Well, how long did you live here? Well, about 3 months. Long enough for me to develop that framework and to lean on it and maybe meet some people. And of course, a church is the biggest part of that, right? Because you meet a group of people and they already live there and they're like, go try out this place. And oh yeah, it's over there and it's hard to find. And yeah, come over to our house on Friday night. And so church is really a central hub, I think, at least for our travel and our nomadic lifestyle. Because you go there, you meet people, they tell you stuff. Maybe you make a friend, you show up. We love churches with Sunday schools and Bible studies on Wednesday night because, then we can kind of interact without having to be there 6 months for the next big event. But yeah, there's there are how we face, I guess, the nomadic lifestyle. We've lived here in Justin now for over a year, and yeah, we get restless to move somewhere else, and we're actually leaving in June to go up to the Northeast and visit those states and stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of things that you mentioned, like that are really near and dear to my heart. Duct tape. No, I'm just kidding. That is kind of important for the RV lifestyle, at least.
Oh, I'm sure.
Mil- Military transitions was also kind of near and dear to my heart because I did, was in 20 years and got out. And it was funny because I, as you are yourself, I'm a nomad my whole life before I had a choice, before I even recognized myself as a person. I probably looked around and was like, I'm a person. Where are we going to? I'm in the front seat of the truck. I don't know where we are, where we're going to. I don't have friends. I don't have childhood friends. We moved every couple of years, and then I joined the Marine Corps, and I moved less often. that I did before I joined the Marine Corps. And now, ever since I've been out, I've been moving more often than I've ever moved in my entire life. And I think I'm way over 200 moves in my lifetime now of 51
Wow.
years. So, yeah, if you ever need somebody to pack a U-Haul, I'm your guy because, I moved a lot. I can fit stuff into small spaces, a lot of stuff, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, the military transition. So I did not get back out and go back to my hometown or back to the town I even joined the Marine Corps from and look around and see people still doing the same thing. Yeah, so I came to different places where I didn't know anybody, boots on the ground, start over. What do you want to do? Well, I retired from the Marine Corps. I thought I would just hang out with old people and smoke cigars and tell stories the rest of my life. And I go to the cigar shop and nobody's there on a weekday, right? It's just me smoking cigars by myself. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, maybe I need to find something to do with my life. And but yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective, and I appreciate you sharing that when you got back, that everybody was kind of doing the same thing and in a rut. And a lot of people are like geographically in a rut. What do you think
I
about
agree.
that?
No, I agree. I mean, what's the statistic? I mean, most people only live within 5 miles of where they were born or where they grew up.
Yeah,
I mean, it really is very, very small. The amount of distance people will travel. Their circle is incredibly tight. My wife was very similar. She didn't know that she wanted to be a traveler. She didn't know that she wanted to go to all these other places. And in fact, when we moved to Hawaii, it
yeah,
kind of scared her. And so it wasn't until she got to see multiple places and experience those areas that she was like, "Oh, this is different. This is cool. I like this." And so when
yeah,
we look at travel, we find a house or a rental or whatever, and we're there for
yeah,
at least a year, right? We'll sign a 1 year lease. It's not enough time for us to feel like we're tying things down, but it is enough time for us to kind of understand where we are. And for us, it was like, okay, well, we went to Hawaii. We found this place on Craigslist because they use Craigslist out there. At least they did at the time. If you went on like Zillow or anything else, you're probably going to get scammed. But for some reason, Craigslist was what they used. And so we found a nice little place up in Mililani where we wanted to be. And then we found another place, again through Craigslist, in Mililani for our second unit and loved it. I mean, it was something so different than what we'd see here in the States. And then we moved
yeah,
to Virginia Beach, and it was like, oh, they don't use Craigslist here. It's Zillow or it's Realtor.com or something like that. And you had to learn what they use, what they gravitated towards. And so
yeah,
now when we come back here, it's like, okay, well, we're not finding something on this particular platform. Let's try this because we already had experience with it before, right? We already had something that we have a tie
yeah,
to. And so we just keep going to new places, trying new things, and who knows what's going to happen. That's the greatest part about it. I mean, we're looking at land here in Texas, but to be honest, we struggle with where we want to be. We struggle with what we want to do. I mean, we want a big family, but at the same time, we don't want to be tied down to any one place.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
it's definitely a struggle. And I mean, you're in a fifth wheel, so it's a little bit different for you. You can just pack up and go whenever you want,
right,
but you don't have a big family.
right.
So
My
that's
kids,
that's
our
that's
kids are all grown.
yeah, your
Yeah,
kids are all grown. So I mean, I've got a 10-year old or 11-year old in the house. I've got an almost 2-year old and a now 2-month old. And we want more. What do we do?
yeah,
You can't.
yeah,
And we thought about moving back to Hawaii, right? And so because we know that space, we know where our life was. We love the people there. The culture is fantastic, and you get the beach whenever you want. I mean, let's be honest. We live in Texas. We have a beach, but it's not the greatest. And if we want blue water, I mean, you can either go to Possum Kingdom, which has really blue water, but it's a lake, or you have to drive all the way down to like Port Aransas for that kind of water. In Hawaii, it was, I'm going to go 30 minutes north to North Shore, and then I can choose between, I don't know, 30 different beaches up there that are absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the the beaches are what you see in magazines and photos,
Right.
and that's daily life for you. So we, I don't know what we do for that. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting take, that this lifestyle. We actually even found a YouTube channel where they're literally called the Nomadic Movement, and they moved all around. They kind of went all over the country in a bus, and then kind of settled on 5 acres of land down in Panama, and decided they were going to build a business down there, a coffee business, and they do all kinds of stuff. And we look at that and go, that sounds interesting. I'd love to do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like you have to sacrifice one thing for another, right? I mean, to get to that. Like if you want to lock on and settle into the coffee business, well, that's what you're doing, right? It's not I'm going to do it for 6 months and then I'm no, you bought property, you bought warehouses, you got coffee, you growing it, whatever is involved. I can only imagine it's agricultural, but you got to wait for it to grow, and maybe you can sell your harvest and move, but usually things don't move that fast, right? Takes a few years
No,
probably to get it going. And so you're looking at, so on one hand, you want to be nomadic and you want to keep yourself free and open, but on the other hand, you see all these things that, wow, we could do that. That might be fun. I don't know. But if you commit to try it, well, that's 2 to 5 years that you're committing to not be nomadic. Yeah.
yeah. Now I will say the YouTube channel that we watched, they were smart about it. It wasn't just them growing coffee, right? So they met a guy who was down there who had his own shop. They went into business with him. They found farms all around the area. Panama is one of the best areas for growing coffee in the world. And so they
I'm
found
sure.
some of the best coffees down there. And their whole thing is they built a brand that then sold coffee, and they immersed themselves in that world and to that brand. And so when you drink their coffee, they don't grow any of it. But when you buy a bag, you not only support them, you support every farm that they purchase from. And so that's just people helping people at that point. And
Yeah.
it's a really great idea because they're not tied down to that one spot. Yeah, they're building, I think right now they're building a house on that land. But for them, it's not just, oh, we live in Panama. It's
Right.
we're helping all these families, all these different tribes down in Panama that grow coffee. We're helping them out too, or we're helping the locals, find work. That's a really cool concept, and I think that's one of the things that we really gravitated towards. Is we never wanted to be tied down to an area. That's why we never wanted to open a. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to open a restaurant, but I don't want to open a restaurant at the same time because I don't want to have to deal with all the hassle of
Yeah.
zoning and licensing and all the other stuff that goes with it. And then when you own a restaurant, you can't just be like, "Hey, let's go to Vegas today. Let's go to New York. Let's go to Washington, whatever."
Right.
You can't do that. You have to really plan that out. And so it's
Yeah.
difficult to do when you have when you want to be a little bit spontaneous, or when you want to be a little bit more adventurous.
Well, and I want to share that I found a situation where through friendship, unexpected friendship, I which speaks to one of the big undertones of this podcast is relationships and how powerful they are, how good they are for you, and how, whatever, with business, with your personal life, with recreation, friendships just make life better all the way around. And we looked into that, I think, in episode 16. Me and a friend, a guest, talked about friendship and how you be intentional with your friendship. Well, to get back to my story, so like I said, oh, I want to get a hive of bees. I'm in somebody's backyard. He let me use this part of the yard for whatever I want. And I asked him about bees, and he's like, okay. And I like it. And I get into it. And then another guy that I was in a Bible study with, he says, you know what? You can have my bees. They're back in my property. I haven't, if I got any, you can have them. I had two hives back there. I haven't checked on them in a while. I've been busy. And he gave me his bees. And then in the process, he realized, man, I like working with bees again. Hmm. I want to do that some more. And so we started a business. But the nomadic part of this is that he was like, I've got 10 acres. You like to travel. why don't we move your bees over here to my 10 acres and we'll keep the bees here and they'll be our bees. And, we'll sell the honey and we'll do this stuff. And like, all of a sudden, I'm released again, right? Because bees hold me in place, right? You don't just put bees in your neighbor's backyard. They might shoot you. It is Texas, you don't do that without asking or out consent. What do you do with bees? I guess you try and sell them, sure. But he gave me an alternative where, you know, I can put my bees there with his bees, and there are bees now, and and I get to travel. And sure enough, I did. I put one of my bees over there, and we went to California and came back, and the bees are just fine. He checked on them and everything else. But also on the other end, I try and be in town for the harvest, the honey harvesting season, which would be probably in a month from now, late April, at least this year. It changes from year to year. And I'll be starting to get, we'll get gallons and gallons of honey and we'll do whatever we do with it and try and sell it to people and all this stuff. But yeah, that's through a relationship and through a friendship. Sounds like the same thing that worked for your friend in Panama, or no, I'm sorry, the YouTube channel you watch in Panama was they made friends with some of the locals, and they're like, we'll do some of the work here, and we just want some passive income from this, but mostly you guys keep it and make your lives better, you know. So that's the part that is an unknown, powerful variable in every part of your life. You never know if you're going to go to a new state and make a new friend there for the
True.
rest of your life in any moment. But go ahead. You look like you have something.
No, 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 I agree with you. We lived in Miami and we didn't make really any friends, but I have an acquaintance down there that I'll probably, talk with every now and then, probably for the rest of our lives. We have a lot of common interests. Same with Virginia. We kind of, we meet people that nobody ever knows who's going to be in their life for how long,
Right.
but it's funny how
Sure.
we always gravitate towards very similar styles of people.
Yeah. Well, and I got to tell you too, the nomadic lifestyle, it's another thing I love about it is I'm free to go visit family and friends and veterans I served with. And as a matter of fact, that's what we did in 2022 when we went on the road. We kind of decided where we'd go based on friends that I had served in the Marine Corps with and family that was living throughout America. And so we stopped to visit them, at least spend a day, sometimes spent 2 weeks in their driveway, and just had a good time. And there's something about that just builds relationships even stronger. It's like showing up, not just showing up at their door. I mean, that seems kind of sketchy. But if you contact them like, hey, I'm coming through Missouri, would you like for us to stop by and visit? And then they ask for time off from their work, and then we hang out with them, maybe go fishing. We cook for them in our RV. They cook for us in their house. And, when the time is right, when we get an itch maybe or something, we're like, okay, we're leaving tomorrow. And they're like, okay, like, come say goodbye in the morning. But that has been such a big part. And I didn't expect that to be the biggest blessing of being nomadic was the relationships that you build stronger with family and friends and even veterans. See, like I served with, as you did, with so many veterans, and I didn't even know their first name, much less where they came
It's
from,
true.
much less their family life or their favorite color, or I didn't know anything. Maybe how good as marksmen they were or how good they were at throwing a grenade. But other than that, I didn't know very much about them at all. And so now I get to see them in their life, and I'm like, wow, I thought I liked you, but now I really like you because I see who you are in your own environment, back in your own state. And yeah, it's led to a lot of good conversations. So, did you have any other rabbit holes you want to go down? Because I have a few things still, if you don't.
No, I mean the rabbit hole of nomadic living is so much fun. I mean, we that's one of the reasons why we're in the business we are is because we never wanted to be tied down, right? My business gets to
Yeah,
go anywhere I do. And so
yeah,
that was a thought process behind, okay, what do we do? And so building out, first starting in web design, then moving into what we do now, that can be done anywhere. Anywhere there's an internet connection, and most of the time, even if there's not, I have a phone. So I can do a lot of it from there.
yeah, yeah. There's something about that. I mean, because obviously I have podcasting. I can do that from anywhere, especially with my Starlink, like movable antenna. Like I got the mobile whatever package. And so anywhere within the continental United States, I get, 180 megabytes of download speed. If I can see the sky, then I get the internet. So that's kind of revolutionary, and I like that. But that also makes podcasting available anywhere, especially remotely like this. Also, like, well, beekeeping moves to this guy's house, and I've come back seasonally to help. And then my first one is pottery workshops. I've already thought about. It's already super mobile. Like I just show up at somebody's house and do pottery or lead them and teach them how to make pottery from their dining room table. And so I could do that anywhere too. So yeah, you think about, in my mind, I guess I work out everything before I commit to something. Will this work on the road? Will this work if we go north for the summer and go south for the winter? Will this work? And if it doesn't check off, then it doesn't stay very long.
No,
For those things.
absolutely. No, and you also, and for a lot of it too, people don't realize that your clientele also plays a role in what you can and cannot do. So, like for us here, we moved back last year. We picked up a client, and they didn't like the fact that my wife was going through some struggles with the latter part of her pregnancy, and
Yeah,
so we weren't around to help hold that person's hand or help with their business or whatever. And they didn't like that. And so if I
yeah,
was a nomadic, if I was, let's just say I was always at distance, how would that client have been? Would they have even been with me? And so that plays a role too. You have to make sure that your clients know that, hey, we're not going to be around from a local standpoint. We're going to be moving. We're always going to be traveling, making sure that
yeah,
the business is built for that.
yeah. Well, and I thought of something also that related roughly to nomadic lifestyle and business, and that is that, like, in normal business, let's take a guy, he works in a cubicle, he's an accountant or something, and he's working in big business. And it's just an understood fact that if you want to get more pay, you have to leave that job and go to another job. You know, pretty much, that movement helps to pay. And I think about that for maybe for your business, but definitely for my business as well. Like I can go somewhere else and I can say, yeah, I did pottery in Texas for 5 years. And so and I pay myself. So I decide my prices. So I can decide my prices are going to go up 20%, right? And nobody there knows. They're not getting, like, if I change my prices between one person and another here in local Justin, man, they probably know within 2 hours, right? They're like, what did he charge you? Like $50? He only charged me 30 or whatever. And people, but when you move to another part of the state, nobody's calling back to Justin to find out what I charge back here. And if they do, it's even accepted. They might even be like, it makes sense. I'm glad he increased his prices. He's good at what he does, or whatever. But that takes me back to another concept, and this is the last little rabbit hole, and then I'm gonna let you talk again if you wish. But like sometimes to grow, you gotta go.
That is true. I think that most people don't actually know what they want, and so that plays a large role there. So you can either stay in one spot and you can do the same thing over and over again. For some people that works, and to be honest, God bless them, because that does not work for me.
Yeah, yeah,
I've never been at a job longer than a couple years, and that was only because I was 14 when I got it, and then I was the military right after that. And so, other than that, I've got to be moving. I can't be stuck in one spot. The weekends, some people were like, they are fine with staying at the house. No, thank you. Like, please, like, let's get out. Let's go get fresh air. Living in Texas, like, there's a lot of people that think Texas is flat. Like, I couldn't tell you the amount of people that think the state is flat. But my wife and I, we just went off driving a couple days ago, and we went to Palo Pinto area. And this thing, it was like being in the middle of Tennessee. It was so many mountainous regions and so many
okay,
hills,
yeah,
and these like backwoods, 2-lane roads, full on U-turn or U-shaped turns down the cliffs and everything.
Yeah.
We were up on a spot that was like, I looked down and it was at least 300 feet
Yeah.
to the bottom of the cliff. And I don't know about you, but that's not flat at all. And that's such a different scene. You don't see that in the DFW area. You don't see that going north towards Oklahoma. You only see that in specific spots. To be honest, I've lived in Texas a good majority of my life. I mean, up until I was 20. I got back from the military at 23, and then we went out 9 years later. So a good chunk of my life has been here in this Texas. I would have
Yeah.
never found that place. I would have never known about that place if I didn't just
Right.
get in the car and drive.
Well, and they say Texas is the only state where Texans go on vacation. They just go to Texas. Just
That's
another
true.
part.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny. I've lived in so many other states, and I can tell you that most of the people they travel by highway. And Texas is one of the very, very few states that have so many back roads to get to spots, right? If you want to go to Mineral Wells, you have to take 20 west for a little bit. And then when you get to Weatherford, you got to get off the beaten path, and now you got to take a back road all the way to Mineral Wells.
Yeah.
And then if you want to keep going to Possum Kingdom, you have to stay on a back road. And yeah, I guess they're technically highways, but they're state roads. I mean, they're just a 2-lane back road. It's the
Yeah.
greatest
Farm
part
to
about
market road.
Texas. Yeah, I mean, get in the car, drive, find something new. You'd be surprised what's out there.
Well, yeah, and going back to what I said, because I love how it rhymes, and I don't know, I don't think I heard it anywhere. I think I just kind of came up with sometimes to grow, you got to go. And I didn't want to go. And I didn't come by that by reading a nice little novel or a book or hearing it or even come up with that idea. I was forced into this way of thinking by the Marine Corps. It's like, wow, things are going good here. We got everything going the way we want. Oh, here's your orders. Well, I've only been here 2 years. Well, you did such a good job. We're moving you somewhere else, like to do a completely different job. And I'm like, okay, well, I get to take some of what I learned at the last job to my new job. So there's that. But now I got to figure this out and get this running good again. And then boom, they're going to give me orders to somewhere else. And I found that like that's a good way to live, not the Marine Corps. Staying somewhere, getting good at something for 3 years, and then moving, into either a new field or a new part of the country. And like by moving you that much, and it's so painful, right? I had kids, I had, a spouse, I had friends, and all, and kids are in school, and it's like you got orders to the West Coast, and I was like, or East. I went to the West Coast from the East Coast. I went to the East Coast from the West Coast. I'll get it straightened out in a minute. But anyway, so like, yeah, it's painful. It's like pulling you out by the roots and putting you somewhere else. But that's also how we have farmland with abundant groceries or resources and in America and stuff like that is because there's this concept that maybe it's even in nature. I don't know. I haven't thought about it. This concept of if you do you want to grow, then you have to do something different. You have to get out of your comfort zone. And I think about also like the other thing, like we talk about people staying in the same town. And in a way, you kind of specialize in that town. Like, and that's what doctors do. They specialize. That's what I could do as a potter. I could specialize. Like I've worked on so much pottery that this is the thing I do now. Like I've never used a wheel before, but I'm going to get onto the wheel and I'm going to specialize in the wheel. I'm going to put 10,000 hours or something into making pottery on the wheel and I can specialize there. But in the process of specialization, like you're focusing your effort and your time and you're now also focusing your vision and your goals on a certain small point instead of keeping your awareness open to learning something about that, learning something else about this, and learning something over there. What do you think about that?
No, I agree to a point. I think most people don't. I don't think they really specialize. I think they just don't want to take a chance. I think that's
Hmm.
where a lot of it is. You'll see them; they'll gripe and complain about their job day in and day out. Yet they'll stay there for 20 years, 30 years, whatever. They'll go to search for a new uh, for a new opportunity, but end up doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of people just, they're too scared to get out there and see what's there for themselves. And so they kind of just stick with what they know. But
Hmm.
because,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
guess
even a doctor who
yeah,
specializes in something, that doctor probably didn't stay in that one spot. They might have had to go somewhere else to learn that
right.
specialty, and then they
Different
came back.
hospitals. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so they had to bounce around. You got to think, most people, my wife was a server since she was like 17 years old, 15, 16, something like that. And she did that up until she was in her 30s. And you see it all the time. People who are in the service industry, they'll be there their entire lives. They'll have no retirement, no afterthought of what they want to do.
Yeah.
They just go to work and they work to live. And I think a lot of people do that. And living a nomadic lifestyle, you really can't do that. You have to actually think about where you're going to live, what you're going to do, how you're going to pay your bills. Because I don't care if you have a fifth wheel or if you have a lease. You've got to, there's a place to live, and you have to be able to supply it.
Yeah.
And so
No,
I think
yeah.
I think that's where most people are. They don't want to take the risk, and maybe they're just ignorant to the fact that there is something else out there, something better. Who knows?
Hmm. Well, and I agree with you. I just came to that idea, but it's all in my mind. It's just kind of floating around right now. Nothing solidified except that, like, this concept of a comfort zone and comparing it to a box. And you live in this box every day, day in and day out. And I see some people like that for sure, especially in small town Texas. People live in that same box all day long. And yeah, did they get really good at living in that box? Yes. But what are they missing out on? They're missing out on the unknown. They're missing out on having to adapt to new circumstances and places. They're having to adapt to new jobs and new roles. And, because I might be the guy in Bible study that knows Greek here in where I'm at in Texas, the DFW area. But and that may be a role I feel in any given Bible study, but I go somewhere else and I'm the little fish in the big pond, right? And I'm like, wow, I got so much to learn here that I wasn't going to get where I was at, you know, and there's so much, and Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot too, that like everything you want in life is out there in the unknown. Pushing out into the unknown is how you get anything good accomplished for yourself or for others, or become a success. But yeah, so I like that, and I appreciate you straightening me out because I mean I wanted to give them maybe more credit than I see. I'm like hopeful. I'm like, well, maybe they're just getting really good at that. But in reality, you're right. I don't see that with my eyes anywhere. Like, this is what I do. This is what I've done my whole life. If a new person comes in or a new idea comes in, well, I don't even know what to do about it. I can't adapt to it. I definitely can't adapt to it and create a business to meet it. It's like, this is what I do. Well, go ahead. What else you got?
No, I think there's a marketer. His name's Alex Hormozy. He has a really good saying. He goes, if you were playing a video game and you wanted to build a particular type of character, well, they would have to go through hardships. They'd have to learn these skill sets, and they'd have to learn all these different. They'd have to go on these different quest lines and everything. And we look at life and we go, I don't want to do all that. I'll play a game where I do that
Yeah.
for my character, but I don't want to do that for my own life. You know what? I'm good here. I just want to stay right here. I want life to be like it was. And in reality, they're living in fantasy. They're not living in what the real world is. And I think
Yeah.
that's where a lot of people stay. I graduated from Mesquite High School. I grew up in Mesquite, and I will tell you, most of the people are still there doing the same thing. They might have migrated to Garland, which is literally the next city.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know people who are still there. The same. They've lived in the same house that their parents had um, from the
Yeah.
'60s or the '70s, and it's like, I what all have you done? When that old saying, we never have ambitions on our deathbed. We only have regrets.
Yeah.
I never wanted to live like that. I never wanted to be like, I wish we'd have done this. I wish we could have done this. For me, it's, people, we make money to live our life. We don't make money to live in one spot.
Yeah.
If you have, You can buy a lot of stuff. There's no doubt about that. And there's no shortage of companies who are out there that are going to sell you something. But in our experience, the best thing we've ever bought was experiences.
Yeah.
We got to buy adventures. We got to buy memories that I would have never had. We grew up dirt poor. And like our $125 rent on our trailer, we almost got evicted from a couple times. That's where I grew. I never wanted to be back there, but at the same time, I didn't want to be stuck with one spot.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where a lot of people are. They're just too scared to get out there and actually take a quest and see where they could end up. That whole thing. You never know you don't know what you don't know. And if you're just
Right.
sitting in the four walls that well, you're just complacent with where you are. You can't gripe and complain about your life if you don't get out there and do anything different.
Well, and I'm going to loosely connect some dots here to really agree with you. It's like fear of missing out. And, we compensate. It's funny that the fear of missing out is working because so many people are missing out on real life, you know, and while they might have 15 Amazon boxes on their front door, they might be missing out on life, on real life. And I think about the video game piece you talked about, and so many people are like, man, this video game, it's hard. I love it. And I'm like, you want a real hard video game? Try getting a career. Try, no, just do it. Do whatever you want to make knives in your video game. That's fine. And I'm a video game player, so I'm not like judging them. But it's like, you want to make knives? Well, try doing it in real life. Well, I'd have to get equipment and maybe have a shop space and, get metal. And where do I do that? And it's like, and some people are doing that and they're really successful at it. And it's like, just envision. And I think video games can kind of be like jealousy. We think jealousy is so negative. We think jealousy, we hide it from anybody we feel jealous about, unless sometimes people say it as a compliment, which I don't really get. But when you think about jealousy, the term that I heard that reframed it was like, that is a roadmap to where you want to be. If you ever feel jealous, pay attention to it because that's a roadmap to where you want to be. Maybe that person's driving a brand new Mercedes and you're jealous of them. Well, it's because you want to be successful, because you want to actually trek out into the unknown, go and find loot and bring it back to normal life, because we all thirst for that. We're hungry for adventure, and people are selling themselves short, like we're talking about, looking at and expecting the video game to provide them quests and rewards. And in real life, I mean, rewards are right outside of your comfort zone, just like positioned, almost like a fence around you, like the rewards for real life. And you walk out there and you're just like with bees for me. I was like, well, I think I'd like to have bees now that I have a little bit of this property I can use. And I got bees, and like all of a sudden, within a few weeks, I got a honey list with 25 people names on it that want honey the next time I have it. And I have a list of people that want hives when I get extra hives from gathering swarms. And it's like, well, this was just waiting for me to spend $200, $300 on a box to put bees in. And once I did it, everything else just clicked into place like falling dominoes, you know, and that's what's waiting for people. Well, go ahead.
No, but you took a chance, right? Said, hey, this $200 or $300. What can happen with it? And I think a lot of people, they do that. My mom used to be like this, where she would like, oh, it's so expensive, and it's like, yeah, but not really. Like, when I was growing up, oh yeah, $100 for dinner. I don't know if you've been to McDonald's lately, but it's almost $100 now.
Well,
I
you got
mean,
kids. You got kids. Well,
well, yeah, yeah, it's pricey. Woo! We find buffets for a reason, but people won't take $200 or $300 to test something out and see if it works, see if it's something they want to do. They won't, invest in themselves to possibly make more money or to learn a new skill. Everybody wants a deal. They want to find the cheaper route, and then when they get a much less desired result, it's, well, that didn't work, or, well, I tried that. And let's
Yeah.
be honest, no, you didn't. You know, I hate to say it, but you kind of half-assed it. And so I think that's where a lot of people differ from even people like us, where we're willing to go out there and try things. And, you know, 20 years in the Marines, let's be honest, and you tried a lot of stuff at the Marines' expense, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure the Marines were like, absolutely, thank you so much. In Hawaii, I'll tell you, in the Army, we tried things at the Army's expense, or more or less, we were the guinea pigs for a lot of the Army's experiments too. So, we got to try things too. But at the same time, I guess we grew an aversion to being scared of what's out there. I think
Yeah.
that's what the military really does well, is they train you on two things really well: anxiety management, right? Because they're constantly putting you in a position that you're going to be anxious about.
Yeah.
And then, of course, having an aversion to change. You can't be in the army and dislike change. You can't be in the military and dislike change, because every 2 to 3 years you are going to be uprooted to a new area. And now there might be some policy or whatever. If you have a child that's special needs and they need a particular type of school where the military only has it in that particular area, yeah, that's one thing. That's an outlier. But you cannot be in the military and dislike change, because it's always changing.
Yeah. You're living in an illusion if you think that, for sure. I mean, if a person thinks they're not going to change anything. Yeah. Well, and I thought of something you said, thought of something to add to it. Like, I had this idea that possessions seem to tether you down, but like passions seem to set you free.
Absolutely. When's the last time you seen a garage sale of somebody's memories? It might be their things, but it's not their memories.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
not the things that they did. It's just their stuff. You can never sell off the things that you've done, the things that you've experienced. You can only sell off the stuff that you've acquired along the way.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a really good point too, for sure. Yeah. So, but I mentioned in a previous episode, like I think it was just the very last one that just came out, we realized, and the guest said that word tether, like, because I was talking about how I was getting all rid of all my stuff, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms worth of stuff, to move into an RV originally, and this was probably about whenever 2018 was, 7 years ago. And, and as something strange happened as I decided to put this board game into the get rid of pile, like, I felt a little freer. I was surprised by that. I was like, I'm going to feel grief and loss, and I'm going to miss this probably every day for the rest of my life. And then I put it into that pile, and I'm like, huh, I feel better actually. I feel more free. I feel more ready to go on the road with the RV, and everything that I did that with. I was like giving myself back pieces of myself, and pulling tethers, pulling stakes out of the ground. Like, there's nothing to hold me here anymore, because, if the possession doesn't fit in the RV, then it doesn't go. Like, people hand me stuff. Oh no, it's free. And I'm like, I don't have space for it. Sorry, here, take it back.
Right.
Give it to
It
somebody
costs
else.
something.
Look for somebody with a house. They'll probably have a back storage closet. You can just slide it right in among all the other forgotten nonsense back there.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, if it don't fit inside your lifestyle, then it's not for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I thought about your idea. You said you wanted to start a restaurant, but you can't do that while you're nomadic. And I thought, why not a
Right.
food truck? Get a
But
big
you
food
things
truck. You can go ahead.
Yeah, no, no, no. Yeah, you're right. You can get a food truck. You can go all over the place, but every single city has its own regulations on food trucks. They've got their own regulations on what you can and cannot do. I can get a food handler's license that's for the state of Texas, but what happens if I go into Oklahoma? What happens if I go into Arkansas or New Mexico or whatever? Right? That's different. And so I have to abide by regulations there. The great part about having a digital business and nomadic, it affords a nomadic lifestyle because my business is on the internet. It kind of goes everywhere, and I don't have to. I was gonna say, I just don't have to abide so much by local regulations doing what I do.
Well, and I was thinking through the food truck while you were talking, and I was thinking, well, you're right. That's a lot of regulations, and sometimes it varies by county to county and city to city. But at first, I was like, well, there's only 50 states, but I mean, that's a lot. 50 is
It's a
a lot,
lot.
right? But you could, I mean, you could, one state at a time. It's just like one bite at a time. Yeah. So I don't know. But you said that was your passion, that was your dream. And I was like, well, what can I do to support this wonderful, passion? I was like, oh, we could move into a food truck. But you're right. That is a lot of work. And maybe it'll happen like for you, and maybe it's already happened for you, like it's happened for me. Like I got into pottery workshops and I made a little money with that. And when it was time to get into bees, then I took some of the money I made from pottery workshop and I bought a hive box, so the one business I have supports the other businesses I have. And, it's just like this constant investment, so it's like one state at a time, or maybe there's some states you don't know you're not going to want to go to, and or you can't drive to Hawaii, and so that
Right.
limits your list. I'm just trying to help you, and I'm not trying to
No, no, no. I
make you
think so.
uncomfortable.
So for us, I've thought about that, right? Food truck, but there's also other things that we don't think about, right? And so where do I source food? Where do I get all
Yeah,
of my ingredients? Where do I get these things? Now, normally you would try to find something like a restaurant depot or U.S. Foods has a chef store down in Farmers Branch, right next to Dallas, and those are good spots. That's where I could source a lot of good food for, a very reasonable price.
yeah,
What happens when I leave that area? Where do
yeah,
I go?
yeah,
Butchers are great for a family. They're horrible for a business because you have to buy so much, right? When you're buying in scale, you have to then really think about what you're buying and where you're buying it from. So that's another thing why I don't think we could do a food truck. I mean, we'd love to, don't get me wrong. I love cooking. I love everything about food. Like I said, I'm a fat kid by choice. I've it's
yeah.
just I love food, right? And it's not just like I'm not a sweets guy. Like I got here the old fashioned way with meat and potatoes. So
There
that's
you go.
like that's what I love. But for us, okay. Look, I grew up in a restaurant. I started working at Campese's restaurant when I was 14. I went until I was 20, and when I got out of the army, I went back to Campese's for a couple years after that, until I decided, you know what, this isn't for me anymore. I need something else. And so for over a decade, or for about a decade, I worked in restaurant, and I loved it, but it doesn't suit the lifestyle I want, but I know what
Yeah.
does. Restaurant consulting. So we also do a lot of, we work
Hmm.
with restaurants on their marketing. What are their loyalty programs? What is their automated campaigns? These big stores, these big brands. Your Chili's, your McDonald's or whatever. You're getting text messages, emails, all that stuff from them. Well, a small company can do that too. It's really not that expensive. They just have to take a little bit of time and put everything together. And then we can put everything on an automated loop for them. That's something that can be done. Well, we could help grow that. I'd rather see more mom and pop restaurants than the big chains. I can't stand chain restaurants, right? When we do
Right.
reviews for food reviews, we stay away from chains. But why can't we help support local businesses?
Right. Well, and maybe
That's how
this
we
dream
can
is
help with food.
like a retirement dream because you're still gathering information on the perfect restaurant, right? And so it can be your lifelong, your opus, your lifelong goal, and then you're like, well, it's time to retire. Now I'm going to be staying in this. I've seen the whole world, and I have decided to live here, and this is where I'll do my restaurant, And so, you know, there's still time.
Hey, you never know. The future is always moving, so you never know where you're going to end up.
Yeah. So we move and try and keep up in the nomadic lifestyle anyway. But okay, well,
Yes.
and I appreciate you going down that road. You obviously have thought about it a lot, and you found a niche that's working for you. So, and I'm not trying to shake you out of that. I thought actually I could be helpful, so that's right. But you've already found it all the way through. So, but
For
yeah,
the
we're
most part,
getting
I
close. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, for the most part, yeah. I mean, I love foods. Open a restaurant, great. How can I do that with our lifestyle? And maybe back before I was in the army, I'd have 100% said, just stay here, open a business, and,
Yeah,
spend the next 50, 60 years here just running a business. Didn't work out that way.
Yeah, that's okay. But yeah, thank you for joining me today. And we're getting kind of low on time. And yeah, it seems like, I mean, I've just, and this is my last thought. And of course, I love to do this where I'm like, okay, and it's time to go. But one more thing, and now we talk for 2 more minutes. But it seems like the Army was really, you learned a lot from your time in the Army.
Yeah, mostly by other people's errors. I kind of grew up that way. I had a stepbrother who was always in jail for one reason or another, and I realized at a very early age, just not where I wanted to be. I didn't want to
Yeah,
live like him. I didn't want to have to deal with all the crap that he's dealt with. So I learn a lot through other people's errors and through other people's failures. And I think that
yeah,
a lot of people can really learn from other people if they just let their ego go and just really stop and see what's going on.
yeah. Well, and listening just comes like screaming to the front lines here, right? We just listen to other people as you and me are listening to each other here in this podcast. I mean, in a short example, but like listening to other people helps us to learn from their mistakes and yeah, pushes us into a better place. But thanks for joining me today, Lee, and I'll
Thank you
allow
for
you
having
to
me.
say goodbye and any closing comments you have. And what do you got?
So I would just say if anybody is looking to build a nomadic business, something that they can take with them and they want to grow online, reach out to us at ruckdigital.com and stop duct taping your business together with a bunch of different systems and let us help you pull everything into one spot so that you can work a little bit smarter and not harder.
Awesome. Thank you. No duct tape. I mean,
No
well,
duct tape. Who knows?
okay.
I might make a course just called Stop Duct Taping.
And yeah, there you go. I like it, but I can't live by it, but I like it. But anyway, well, have a good day and we'll see you later. Bye.
All right, take care. Bye bye.